Hello, and welcome to EnglishLogica. With everything that is happening around the world in relation to COVID-19, you might be hearing some words in English that you haven't heard before. This video will help you widen your vocabulary so you can keep up to date with reports in English as well as in your own language. Firstly, what is an outbreak? An outbreak is a sudden or unexpected rise in infections in a particular place or amongst a particular population. This is related to the phrasal verb to break out, as if the illness has broken out of its constraints. There can be a small outbreak in a town, for example, or an outbreak can occur across a large geographical area. The 2014 outbreak of Ebola led to people being put into isolation when they arrived in Europe from West Africa. General hygiene measures usually curb the outbreak of an infectious disease if it is detected early. Contagion. If something is contagious, it can be passed from one person to another. Therefore, contagion is another word for any infectious disease, but it can also be used to talk about the risk of infection. The medical staff worked hard to stop the spread of the contagion. The public are being advised to remain indoors to avoid contagion. Note that contagion can also be used to talk about the spread of ideas or influences that are considered dangerous or disruptive to a society. The extremist views are spreading throughout the region like a contagion. Virulent. You might hear this word used in relation to contagious or infectious diseases that are considered particularly strong or difficult to combat. This strain of the common cold is particularly virulent. It won't be easy to contain. If this disease wasn't so virulent, we could have stopped it in its tracks weeks ago. Now let's look at 3 words relating to the scale of an outbreak and its location. These words are endemic, epidemic, and pandemic. Endemic. If an illness or disease is said to be endemic to a certain population or area, it means that it is always present in some way and may be part of a biological makeup of the people in question. For example, the islanders have always shown a propensity towards that particular illness. It seems to be endemic to their population. Blood diseases are endemic to that ethnic group. They have kept themselves so close together over the centuries that they all suffer from the same condition. Note that endemic can also be used to talk about habits or behavior that is commonplace in a particular place or amongst particular people, for example. Violent crime is endemic to that city. Someone is murdered every day. Epidemic. An epidemic is a widespread outbreak of an illness centered on a specific area. Think of the word epicenter to remember this. Epidemics in recent decades have included Ebola, bird flu, and SARS. Here are some examples to help you use the term. The epidemic was primarily centered on the agricultural industry, and a lot of animals had to be destroyed to stop it from spreading. The town was closed down by the police, and no one could get in or out. That stopped the epidemic from getting any worse. Note that you can also talk about an epidemic of a particular behavior or action, usually in a negative sense. So, you might hear about an epidemic of robberies or an epidemic of crime. Crime rates are rising rapidly across that country. They are expected to reach epidemic proportions by the end of the year. Pandemic. The root pan means all, so when we hear of a pandemic, it means that the illness has spread outside the epicenter, or the area where it began, to a point that everywhere else faces potential infection. Here are some examples of how you use it. The COVID-19 outbreak was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization in March 2020. In 2009, the swine flu pandemic spread across the world and killed almost 20,000 people. So remember, if you hear the word endemic, it relates to a relatively small amount of people or a specific location. An epidemic, on the other hand, is an outbreak of a disease or a behavior centered on a larger geographical area or population. A pandemic is much larger, as it means that the disease has spread across the world. Die of versus die from. The prepositions that follow die or died are often confused. Generally, the rule is that if a direct agent causes death, you use the preposition of. If death is caused by an indirect agent, you use from. Let me explain. A direct agent is something that has an effect directly, like a disease or condition. An indirect agent affects you indirectly, such as a virus or a gunshot. A virus can cause a respiratory disease, and a gunshot can cause organ failure. So, die of is used when what follows is the direct cause, whereas die from is a short way of saying die as a result of. Here are some more comparisons for clarity. He died of starvation, but he died from a lack of food. She died of a heart attack, but she died from complications relating to her heart. He died of organ failure, but he died from gunshot wounds. We hope you found this video useful. We wish you all the best, and we hope that your friends and family stay safe during these difficult times. Visit our website www.EnglishLogica.com for more help with your English learning.